They always say the worst betrayals come from strangers. They're wrong. It's the whispers in your own home, the ones from people who share your table, your bed, your blood, that cut the deepest. I thought I knew my husband. I thought I could trust his family. Until I heard him and his sister talking about me. What they said? It didn't just break my heart. It shattered everything I believed about my life. Subscribe to my channel to stay updated with future content. Enjoy the rest of the video and feel free to share where you're watching from. It started on a quiet Friday evening. I had just finished cleaning up the kitchen, wiping the last of the sauce stains from the counter. The house was silent, except for the ticking of the old clock in the hallway and the occasional creak of wooden floors. My husband Daniel had stepped outside to take a call, or so I thought. I barely noticed when his sister, Serena, arrived. She had a key, of course. She always did. They were close. Too close, some might say. Ever since I married into the family, Serena made it clear I was an outsider in their little world. But Daniel always brushed it off as me being sensitive. I convinced myself it was harmless. That night, I noticed the living room lights were off, but I could hear low voices drifting from the back porch. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop at first. I told myself I just needed to ask Daniel about the leaking sink. But as I got closer to the porch door, the words became sharper, clearer, and something inside told me to stop, to listen. Serena's voice was the first to cut through the stillness. "She's holding you back, Danny. You know that, right? She's dead weight." There was a pause, long enough to hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Daniel's voice followed, calm, careless. "She means well, but yeah, she's never going to be enough. She's not like us." The words were like a slap to my face. My stomach clenched. I stood frozen in the dark hallway, gripping the edge of the doorframe so hard my nails bit into the wood. I told myself I misheard. I had to have misheard. But they kept going. "You could have done better," Serena sneered. "You always settle for less, Danny. You married safe. Boring. She doesn't even know half of what you do." Daniel laughed. That low, hollow laugh I once thought was charming. "She doesn't need to know. Some people are happier being kept in the dark." Their voices became muffled again as they moved further into the garden, leaving me stranded with those words echoing inside me like a cruel joke. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe properly. For years, I thought I was building a life with someone who respected me, who valued me. And in less than 2 minutes, their whispers shattered that fragile illusion. All those moments when Daniel dismissed my opinions, when he brushed off my concerns as overreactions, it all made sense now. It wasn't me being dramatic. It wasn't me overthinking. It was them. And in that moment, standing alone in the dim hallway of my own home, something inside me cracked. I realized I had been playing a role in a script they wrote without me. The obedient wife. The outsider tolerated but never truly accepted. But if they thought I was just going to keep playing along, they were wrong. I wiped my tears, steadied my breath, and made a decision. I was going to turn their whispers into confessions. Public confessions. But first I needed to know how deep this went. The next morning everything felt off. Daniel acted like nothing happened. He hummed while brewing coffee, kissed my cheek like always, joked about the weather turning cold. His mask was perfect, too perfect. I played along. Inside, I felt hollow, but outside? I smiled. I laughed at his jokes. I pretended everything was fine. Because now, I needed to be careful. I needed to watch him the way he'd been watching me, without him noticing. I knew what I heard. I knew what they said. But whispers in the dark wouldn't be enough if I ever wanted to confront them. If I ever wanted to truly make them face what they'd done, I needed more. Proof, details, patterns. That night, when Daniel dozed off on the couch with the TV still on, I took his phone. I knew his passcode. Of course I did. We never kept secrets, or so I believed. But as I scrolled through his messages, my hands shook. There they were, countless threads between him and Serena, and not the typical brother-sister chats. They shared private jokes about me, about how clueless I was, photos of me with snide captions, conversations about trips they'd taken without telling me, expensive dinners I thought we couldn't afford. But it got worse. They were planning something. I couldn't quite piece it together yet, but I saw mentions of property. A family investment Daniel insisted was none of my concern. Legal documents he signed behind my back, and there it was, the same patronizing tone Serena used at every family gathering. She wouldn't understand. Keep her in the kitchen where she belongs. My chest tightened with rage and humiliation. For years, I believed Daniel's stories about struggling with money, about sacrifices, about building a future together. All while they treated me like some blind obstacle they had to manage. I copied the conversations. Every screenshot, every attachment, I sent them to my own email. I needed them safe, hidden, evidence. But something still gnawed at me. If they were this open in texts, what were they hiding in person? Were they meeting behind my back? I needed to know more, and I knew exactly where to look. Daniel's office. He always kept it locked. He said it was for work privacy. I never questioned it. Until now. That Sunday, when Daniel left to run errands, I made my move. I searched for his spare key, the one I'd seen once, dangling from his belt. I found it stuffed inside his sock drawer, taped behind an old college trophy. The office was colder than I expected, sterile, lifeless. Papers were stacked neatly, books arranged like decorations rather than things he actually read. At first, I found nothing unusual, just bills, invoices, files about his company's clients. But then I opened the bottom drawer of his desk, and everything changed. Folders, thick ones, all labeled carefully. One was titled Family Holdings Restricted. Inside, I found contracts, real estate agreements, investments worth more than I ever thought Daniel could afford. And the kicker? Serena's name appeared on almost every page. Co-owners, equal partners. My name? Nowhere. They'd been building an empire behind my back, using our joint savings, using money I believed was going toward our future, toward our house, our dreams. It wasn't just betrayal. It was an erasure. They never saw me as part of their future. I was the placeholder wife while they built a life together, one I was never meant to see. I sat in that cold office for hours, documents spread around me like the ashes of a life I no longer recognized. But I wasn't going to cry. Not anymore. If they thought I'd stay quiet, they didn't know me at all. This time, I would rewrite the script, and the first act, exposing their lies to the world. For days I carried their secrets in silence, like invisible shards beneath my skin. I smiled. I cooked his favorite meals. I listened to Daniel talk about his long work hours, about sacrifices, about loyalty, lies. Every word he spoke now sounded rehearsed, like a script he and Serena had written together. But I wasn't going to confront him yet. That would be too easy for him to dismiss. He'd twist it, gaslight me, paint me as the jealous, emotional wife. I needed to think smarter, play dirtier. So, I started digging deeper. I remembered Serena bragging once, at one of those suffocating family dinners, about a private lawyer she trusted more than anyone. I knew she kept files in her condo downtown, in the glass tower with the fancy security. She always acted like it was her secret war room. I waited for the right opportunity, and it came sooner than I thought. Serena posted on social media about a spa weekend with her girlfriends. Perfect. The condo would be empty. I borrowed Daniel's car, said I needed to pick up groceries. He didn't even blink. He never did. He believed I was predictable, safe. The perfect cover. Her building had tight security, but Serena was careless. She once bragged about how no one could guess her door code. But I did. It was her birthday. Of course it was. The door clicked open, and I stepped inside. It was the first time I'd ever been in Serena's private world. It was cold, immaculate. No warmth, no personal touches, just status symbols, designer bags, rare wines, gold-trimmed furniture, a shrine to her own ego. I searched carefully, methodically, knowing any mistake could blow everything. In her office, I found what I was looking for, a locked drawer. I pried it open using the small screwdriver I brought. Inside, documents, more property deeds, offshore accounts, evidence of deals that went beyond Daniel's company, names I didn't recognize, and then something that made my stomach twist. A file with my name on it. Inside were notes about me, my habits, my weaknesses, even my medical records. They knew everything. It wasn't just about the money. They were preparing to cut me out entirely, legally, financially. Serena had been guiding Daniel to protect their assets from me, preparing him for divorce. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. I photographed everything, every single page, then carefully put everything back where it was. On my way out, I noticed a photo frame on Serena's coffee table. It was of her and Daniel, just the two of them, no spouses, no outsiders. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just greed. It was obsession. Serena didn't just hate me. She wanted Daniel's life to belong to her and her alone. That night, lying beside Daniel as he snored peacefully, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. They thought they had all the power, but they underestimated the woman they had written off as harmless. I had the evidence now, enough to tear down everything they'd built behind my back, but I wanted more than revenge. I wanted them to feel the humiliation they so freely poured onto me. And I knew exactly where to start. Daniel's company had a shareholders' dinner the following week, a perfect stage. All his colleagues, all the important investors, even Serena, always shining in the front row. They loved to show off in public. And soon, I would give them a performance they would never forget. I started planning, printing the documents, recording voice memos, preparing the files on a flash drive. Every click, every step was like sharpening a blade. I would no longer be the quiet wife standing in the shadows. They wanted a show? I'd give them one. And this time, the whispers would be loud enough for the whole room to hear. The night of the shareholders' dinner arrived like an execution date. Daniel fussed over his suit in the mirror, rehearsing his speech, checking his tie. He looked every bit the confident, polished executive. He thought tonight would be about him, about his success, about his carefully crafted image. I let him believe that. Inside, I was calm, too calm. I had rehearsed every step of my plan until it felt like muscle memory. The venue was a grand hotel ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, velvet chairs, rows of carefully dressed men and women clinking glasses of champagne, exchanging fake smiles. Daniel and Serena thrived in this environment. They moved like royalty among their court, basking in admiration, handing out handshakes and rehearsed compliments. But tonight, they had no idea the ground beneath them was about to crack wide open. I sat quietly at our assigned table, blending in, playing the silent wife. No one noticed me. No one ever did. Perfect. The evening unfolded slowly, painfully. Speeches, toasts, performances. Daniel's company rolled out its achievements, its expansion plans, its charity donations. The audience ate it up. And then it was Daniel's turn. He took the stage, all smiles, all charm. I watched him, studied him, the way he looked so proud, so untouchable, the way he stole the spotlight like it was his birthright. He began his speech about leadership, loyalty, values, hypocrisy dripping from every word. I waited, let him bask in it, and then, when the applause reached its peak, I stood, calmly, quietly, holding the flash drive in my hand. I walked to the front, my heels echoing on the marble floor, slicing through the polite laughter. At first, no one paid attention. Then the murmurs began. Serena's face twisted in confusion. Daniel froze, his smile faltering. I took the spare microphone from the table. My hands were steady, my voice clear. "Excuse me?" I said, keeping my tone even, almost gentle. "I'd like to say a few words." Daniel's eyes widened. He tried to signal me to sit down. I ignored him. The room hushed. "This won't take long," I continued. "It's just, there are some things that deserve to be heard. Things whispered behind closed doors. Things I think everyone here deserves to know." I plugged the flash drive into the projector, and the screen lit up. First, the messages, between Daniel and Serena, the cruel jokes, the insults, the hidden investments. The room fell silent, breaths held like glass ready to shatter. Then, photos of the contracts, the properties, the offshore accounts, gasps, whispers, heads turning. Daniel's face drained of color. Serena stood up, her lips moving, but no words came out. "I've spent years in the dark," I said, my voice still calm, but sharp enough to cut the air. "I believed in loyalty, in honesty. I believed in this family. But while I was believing, they were plotting, lying, erasing me from the life we built together." Daniel tried to grab the microphone. I stepped back. "It's all there," I told the audience. "The evidence, the lies, the manipulation. I'm sure the investors here will be interested in how much of the company's funds were funneled into personal projects they never approved." The tension in the room was suffocating. Faces turned away from Daniel. Phones came out. Photos were taken. The whispers grew louder. Unstoppable now. Serena lunged toward me, her face twisted with rage, but it was too late. They couldn't control the narrative anymore. They couldn't erase me. I handed the flash drive to the company's legal advisor, who was already standing, his face grim. "I suggest you take a look," I told him, "before the media does." Daniel finally found his voice. "You're insane," he hissed. "You'll ruin everything." I looked him in the eye for the first time in weeks. "No, Daniel," I whispered. "You already did." And then I walked off the stage, leaving the wreckage behind me. The show was over, but the real consequences were only beginning. The next few days unfolded like a slow-moving storm. At first, Daniel tried to spin it. He sent me frantic texts, voicemails dripping with desperation, rage, denial. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You misunderstood everything. You ruined us. Do you realize that?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The shareholders weren't buying his excuses. The legal department acted swiftly. An internal investigation was launched, freezing assets, reviewing accounts. Serena tried to play the innocent sister, but the document spoke louder than her carefully crafted tears. The media caught wind of the scandal by the end of the week. Daniel's name became a headline. Serena's photo plastered across business blogs, once praising her as a visionary investor, now exposing her schemes. But none of it brought me the satisfaction I expected. Even as I watched them squirm, I felt empty. Because behind the revenge, there was still the wreckage of my life. The life I had built with a man I thought loved me. The life I thought was real. I moved out quietly, packed my things while Daniel was locked in endless boardroom meetings, fighting to keep the scraps of his empire. He didn't beg me to stay. Maybe he knew he'd lost the only person who ever truly saw him for who he was. Or maybe he never cared enough to fight. Either way, it didn't matter. I wasn't his problem anymore. I wasn't anyone's problem. For the first time in years, I wasn't living by someone else's script. I rented a small apartment across town, nothing fancy, just mine. I got a new job, one that didn't chain me to endless sacrifices for people who saw me as disposable. I reconnected with friends I had slowly pushed away during my years of isolation. The healing wasn't instant. It wasn't glamorous. Some days, the ache in my chest felt unbearable, like a hollow space I couldn't quite fill. But other days, I breathed easier, lighter, stronger. One evening, I bumped into an old acquaintance, someone I hadn't seen in years. She told me she always thought I was too quiet, too soft, too agreeable. I smiled. Not anymore, I told her. The truth was, I had been asleep in my own life for too long, letting others write my story, control my worth, decide my place. Not anymore. Daniel and Serena taught me a painful lesson, but one I would never forget. Never let anyone make you feel small in your own life. Never accept being the outsider in your own story. Months passed. The last I heard, Daniel had been forced to step down from the company. Serena was facing multiple lawsuits for fraud and embezzlement, their perfect world crumbling. Did I feel sorry for them? But I didn't hate them either. They were exactly who they always were. I was the one who changed. One rainy afternoon, I found an old photo of Daniel and me, from the early days, smiling, young, hopeful. I stared at it for a moment, and then I threw it away, not in anger, not in sadness, but as a quiet goodbye to the woman I used to be, the woman who settled, the woman who stayed silent. I wasn't that woman anymore. I was ready for a new chapter, one where the only voice I listened to was my own.